Hello, fourth graders, and welcome back to Sun Devil Learning Labs. Our lesson today is covering firsthand accounts. This is for fourth grade ELA. Let's begin by going over today's objective. Our objective is I can recognize a firsthand account along with the key characteristics of a firsthand account. So today we're going to be learning all about what exactly a firsthand account is and how we as readers can identify characteristics of a firsthand account. What I want you guys to do right now is take a moment to read the objective out loud or in your head and really focus on what we will be learning today throughout our lesson. Let's start off by going over a firsthand account. Firsthand accounts are similar to first-person point of view. So firsthand accounts are similar to a text that is being told to us in first person. They are not exactly the same, but they are similar. And remember, first person is when the author is writing from their point of view or perspective. The main character is always telling the story. In a firsthand account, a text is being told by someone who was there at the time of the event being written about. A firsthand account is straight from the source. It's coming straight from someone who was at this event. Secondhand accounts are the person. In a secondhand account, the person that's writing the text is not part of the events. Now let's look at a secondhand account. We're looking at a secondhand account, so we are able to recognize the differences between a secondhand account and a firsthand account. A secondhand account is similar to a third-person point of view, similar to a text being told in third person. Remember, third-person point of view is when the narrator is someone outside of the story and is not a character. This point of view belongs to the person or persons being talked about. The person writing the text is not part of the events in a secondhand account. The author describes what happened or is happening to someone else. And a secondhand account mostly includes information and facts about the subject of the text. It doesn't include feelings and opinions because it's not being told by someone who was actually there when the event occurred. It's all based off of facts and information that we have learned. So firsthand versus secondhand account focus. So in a firsthand account, the focus of the text is told by someone who is actually there. In a secondhand account, the focus of the text is told by someone who is not actually there at the time of the event. So it's really important to be able to distinguish between the two. In the firsthand account, it's told by someone who was actually there. And for a firsthand account, the information would be based off of eyewitness/experience. The information would be told with more emotion and feelings as well as opinions. In a secondhand account, the information would be based off of learned information, not an actual experience. Secondhand accounts may lack emotion and feeling that firsthand accounts include. And think to yourself, how would a text be different if it was being told by someone who was actually there? Would there be more feelings? Would there be more emotion? Why are firsthand accounts important? They can be found in nonfiction and informational text. Firsthand accounts can give us some insight into history and what famous people throughout history have lived. This includes famous people who have lived throughout history and people that are not famous who have lived throughout history. Firsthand accounts are not limited to known people. They are anything that is written down and passed down through history or different types of text that describe someone's experience being somewhere or doing something. And with firsthand accounts, we have access to information we would otherwise not have access to. This being because the information is coming from someone who was actually there. So with a firsthand account, we are gaining access into the mind of someone else and what they experienced when they were actually somewhere, when they experienced whatever it is they may have experienced. We are gaining direct access to the information that they had gained through their experience, the feelings they felt through their experience, whatever it may be. So in our last slide, we spoke on nonfiction text and informational text. I just wanted to give you guys some quick definitions in order to fully understand where we can find firsthand accounts. So a nonfiction text is a text that includes real life situations and factual information. Usually has a purpose to express or inform. Informational text is a nonfiction writing written with the purpose to inform the reader about a specific topic. So what do we learn and gain through firsthand accounts as readers? We can learn about someone's specific experiences with their exact emotions and feelings during their experience of the event being discussed. We can learn what someone is thinking and seeing during a certain point in time. And we gain in-depth information from someone who actually experienced an event. So that's super important. We're gaining in-depth information from someone who was at an event, through someone who experienced something. We're knowing exactly how they felt, exactly what they went through, and exactly what they saw through a firsthand account. These are some clue words that we can look for when we are looking to see if a text is a firsthand account. These words are I, we, us, and me. These clue words might look familiar. Why, you might ask? These are clue words we also use to identify a first-person point of view in fictional stories. And keep an eye out for these words when identifying a first-hand account. So if we're looking to see if a text is a first-hand account or a second-hand account, I want you guys to keep your eyes peeled for these clue words. Again, the clue words are I, we, us, and me. So here's some examples of first-hand accounts. Diaries, journals, autobiographies, which are an account of a person's life written by that person themselves. An email, letter, interview, and speeches. So these are all examples of first-hand accounts. So if you guys at home, if you have a diary, your diary is a first-hand account because that is explaining your experiences through your day-to-day life, whatever you may write in your diary, that is a first-hand account. And can you think of any first-hand accounts that you may have read? And have you written any first-hand accounts? Again, such as a diary or maybe a journal. And take a moment to think of any first-hand accounts that you may have read, that you might have read in history class, in reading class, whatever that may be, and think about what you learned from that first-hand account. Now I want you guys to take a moment to grab a piece of paper and a pencil, please. Through our next few slides, we are going to do an activity. We are going to read, we're actually going to read two different short texts. One is a first-hand account, and one is a second-hand account. And what I want you guys to do is take the knowledge that you learned today through our lesson and choose which account is the first-hand account. Okay, so at this point, you guys should all have your piece of paper and pencil in front of you. And like I said, we will be reading two non-fictional texts. The texts are about the Oregon Trail, and your job is to find out which text is a first-hand account. As I am reading, look to fill in the information in this chart and remember what we learned today about first-hand and second-hand accounts. So we are going to be filling out this chart that you guys see on the screen right here. If we were in an actual classroom, I would have this printed out as a worksheet for you guys, but since this is online, you guys are going to write out this chart and answer these questions and fill in the answers into your chart as I read. So on your chart, it should look something like this: a long rectangle with a line in the middle. On the left, we have key characteristics and clue words. So what are the key characteristics and what are the clue words that tell you which text is the first-hand account? And then our four questions on the right side. Which text is the first-hand account? That's our first question. When I'm done reading, I want you guys to think, okay, which one of these texts is a first-hand account? What information did you learn from the text? Why do you think the author of this text wrote this text? And what are the differences in the text? So take a moment to go ahead and draw this chart onto your piece of paper. On the left, write key characteristics and clue words. And then on the right, you guys don't have to write out these sentences if you do not want to. You can just number these questions 1 through 4. On the next slide with the text, I have typed up the questions so you guys can look at the questions as I read. Just remember the order of them. But if you do want to write out the questions on your chart, go ahead and feel free to do so. Again, as I am reading, I want you guys to answer these questions and look for clue words and key characteristics that define the first-hand text, that were able to help you identify which text was the first-hand text. Okay, comparing first-hand and second-hand accounts. So we have two texts here. We have 1 and 2. We're going to read these two texts, and I really want you guys to be thinking as I'm reading, which text is a first-hand account? We're going to begin with reading text number 1 on the left, the Oregon Trail. In 1843, thousands of men, women, and children began their 2,000-mile journey, leaving the severe depression in the Midwest behind. In search for their better lives in the supposed paradise of Oregon and California on the west coast of America. Most of these people used the route known as Oregon Trail. Relatively better off people traveled in their wagons and horses, while the poor and downtrodden were on foot. The first section of the Oregon Trail was relatively flat and plain, but crossing the Missouri River to reach the west was quite challenging and dangerous. After entering the mountains, the trail was much more difficult, with steep ascents and descents over rocky terrain. The path was full of dangers and other hardships. So that is our first text. I want you guys to think about this text. Maybe pause the video if you need to read over it again. And think about this text and think, is this the first-hand account? Is there anything in this text that tells me this might be a first-hand account? Or is this the second-hand account? Go ahead and think to yourselves. And we will continue with our second text. This text is from Across the Plains in 1844. August 1st, we nooned in a beautiful grove on the north side of the Platte, which is a river. We had by this time got used to climbing in and out of the wagon when in motion. When performing this feat that afternoon, my dress caught on the axle helve. I was thrown under the wagon wheel, which passed over and badly crushed my leg before my father could stop the team. He picked me up and saw the extent of the injury. When the injured limb hung dangling in the air, a surgeon was found and the limb set. This accident confined me to the wagon the remainder of the journey. So in 26 days, we became orphans. Seven children of us, the oldest 14, and the youngest a baby. So I want you guys to think about this text that I just read and think, is this a firsthand or a secondhand account? Was this text told by somebody who was actually at the Oregon Trail? Or was this told by somebody that would be considered an outsider, that was not actually there but had learned information about the Oregon Trail? Remember to look for clue words and think over the 4 questions that I have on the right. These are the 4 questions that we should be answering right now. Which text is the first-hand account? What information did you learn from the text? Why do you think the author of this text wrote this text? And what are the differences in the text? So take a moment to pause the video and complete your answers for these questions. And when you unpause the video, we will continue with a review of these questions and a review of which text here is the first-hand account. So the review of the chart. The clue words in the text, which was the first-hand account, was my and I. Those are the clue words. In key characteristics, we were able to look at the story and tell that the story is being told by someone who was actually there. We were able to look at the first-hand account and tell that the story was being told by someone who was actually there. And going to the right and looking at our questions, which text is the first-hand account? Hopefully you guys were able to note that the first-hand account was our second text that we read, Across the Plains in 1844. This was our first-hand account. Clue words were my and I, and it was obvious that the story was being told by someone else just through the text that it was spoken in. It was spoken in a way that we were able to understand that it was somebody that was there, this was being told by someone who experienced these things. What information did you learn from the text? Your guys' answers for these next 3 questions might be a little bit different than mine. These were just example answers that I thought of when I read the text. And what information did you learn from the text? We learned what the Oregon Trail was like and what the travelers went through. So we learned exactly what the Oregon Trail was like and what the travelers went through on this Oregon Trail. Why do you think the author of this text wrote this text? To inform others about the Oregon Trail. So I think the author wrote this text to inform others about the Oregon Trail and to inform others about what it was actually like. And what are the differences in the 2 texts? The first-hand account is told by someone who traveled in the Oregon Trail. So that is a definite difference between the 2 texts. The first-hand account was told by someone who traveled in the Oregon Trail. The text on the left, the first text, was not told by somebody who was actually a traveler in the Oregon Trail. So again, these 3 questions that I just went over, you guys might have different answers for. Our answers are not going to be the exact same, and that is totally okay. I just wanted to get some real quick answers for you guys to be able to see as examples for what I had. Now let's think. How would this text be different? How would this text be different when written as a first-hand account as opposed to a second-hand account? So how was this text different when it was written as a first-hand account as opposed to the second-hand account? What was the difference between the text? Think to yourselves and think exactly what differences you saw between the text, which account you think you maybe learned more from, and how did this text change your opinion on the topic being discussed? And through the first-hand account, were you able to have a better understanding on the topic? So how did these texts change your opinion on the topics being discussed? You guys might have never heard of the Oregon Trail before, and these 2 texts are able to give you some information on the Oregon Trail. And were you able to have a better understanding of the topic from these texts? So take a moment to pause the video and discuss these questions, these few questions with somebody around you, with a parent, with a friend, with a teacher, whoever that may be. Take a moment to pause the video and do so. Let's go over what we learned today. Today we learned what a first-hand account is. We learned the differences between a first-hand account and a second-hand account. We learned the key characteristics of a first-hand account and how we as readers can tell when a text is written in firsthand. We learned how to analyze a text that is a first-hand account, focusing on key details and information. So we did that through our chart, focusing on the key questions, key characteristics of the first-hand account that we were able to find, and clue words. So awesome job today, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed our lesson as much as I did. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Thank you.